Today we'll be doing a detailed comparison of the Amalfi Coast and Cinque Terre. These are two of Italy's most popular coastal destinations and they have a lot in common. We'll be looking at 11 different points of comparison so you can decide which destination is best suited for the holiday you're looking for. We're going to be keeping score just for a bit of fun, but a lot of these comparisons are subjective and what's important to you might differ. So grab yourself a pen and paper and let's go through this list together. Of comparison on our list is the cost of accommodation. Now both locations have plenty of choice that will suit most budgets, but to create a sample of accommodation that we could use for a direct comparison, we did the following steps. We limited our search to mid-range 3-star accommodation only. Then we took the top 10 rated options as per the booking.com reviews. And finally selected a 1-week stay in the busiest month of July. The result was Cinque Terre was 23% cheaper on average at $177 a night. The cheapest in the top 10 was $115 a night. Compared to the Amalfi Coast, where the average was $219 a night and the cheapest in the top 10 was $123 a night. So as you can see, at the lower end, there isn't that much difference. And as long as you book well in advance, you'll be able to find something suitable for your budget that still has everything you need. But as a general rule, if you're looking for high-end accommodation, then the Amalfi Coast is where you'll find more options. Whereas for budget travel, Cinque Terre will have more options for you. But as far as this flawed comparison goes, Cinque Terre came out cheaper and it gets the point. Our second point of comparison is transport between the villages once you're already in each region. Both regions have ferries which are very easy to use and cover the whole length of the coast, but there's one main differentiator, and that is that Cinque Terre has a train line. This massively reduces the amount of time to get between villages and it can move a lot of people at once. Compared to the Amalfi Coast that relies much more heavily on buses. Now there's a road that runs the length of the Amalfi Coast that's very narrow, and while you'll get amazing views when you're travelling between the villages, it can be very slow going and can eat up a big chunk of your day. So Cinque Terre gets the point here purely for the convenience and speed of the train. Even though it's not the nicest way to travel, it will save you a ton of time. So building on the transport theme, for the third point we're going to look at the accessibility of each region. And this is another point where the train line gives Cinque Terre a big edge. If you have your own car, then the Amalfi Coast is probably the easiest. But I'm going to assume that most people watching this video will not have their own car, in which case accessing the Amalfi Coast is going to require a combination of either a train and a ferry or a train and a bus. And when you're lugging suitcases around, neither option is easy. In fact, we had an awful time trying to access the Amalfi Coast and ended up stranded on a train platform overnight. You can get that full story in our complete Amalfi Coast video. We had no such issues getting to Cinque Terre on the train. So that's 3 points for Cinque Terre and 0 for the Amalfi Coast so far. But don't worry, this is going to even out before too long. The fourth point of comparison is the quality of the hiking available around the villages in each region. Now Cinque Terre is well known for having a number of hiking trails that are beginner friendly with beautiful scenery, as well as some more challenging hikes that will take you up into the mountains. However, over the last few years, due to a number of landslides and damage to some of these trails, you'll find a lot of them are still closed. In comparison, the Amalfi Coast also has a lot of hiking trails, but they will be far more challenging due to the size of the mountains in the region. And if hiking is a key part of your vacation plans, then I'm assuming that that's a big positive. The views you get there are simply unbelievable, and there are no closures of any of the most popular trails at the time of recording this video. So that is 1 point for Amalfi. And as we move on to our fifth point of comparison, I think you'll know very quickly who the winner is here, and that is the quality of the views. Now you don't have to hike to get some amazing views in either region, but the Amalfi Coast has the advantage of having much higher mountains, as well as a bus network and a lot of the accommodation options being high in those mountains. We stayed in the town of Ravello, which is the very top of a mountain, and our accommodation was halfway down the side of a hill, so we had views all the way down the coast at all times. We also found some amazing viewpoints around Cinque Terre, but they are just not on the same scale as what you'll get around Amalfi, and most of the best views you will have to do some hiking. Cinque Terre you could describe as cute, whereas the Amalfi Coast you could only describe as epic. That's another point for Amalfi, and that brings the total score to 3 for Cinque Terre and 2 for the Amalfi Coast. Our sixth point is the variety that you'll find in your experience exploring both regions. The villages of Cinque Terre all have a different vibe and their own unique characteristics, but they do all have that coastal Italian village theme. This is actually quite similar to the feel of Positano and the village of Amalfi, but if you ventured to the mountaintop village of Ravello, or perhaps the island of Capri, or even the city of Sorrento, which is adjacent to the Amalfi Coast. Now, all three of these destinations offer a very different experience from that classic seaside Italian village experience. So the Amalfi Coast gets the point, and that evens us up at 3 points apiece. Next, we're going to talk about the crowds. Now, it's difficult to find a reliable source of figures, but generally, the estimated number of tourists that visit Cinque Terre each year is 2.5 million. The Amalfi Coast, 5 million. Now that's twice as many people, but remember, the Amalfi Coast is a much bigger place. But with inferior transport links and one road taking you in and out of the place, you can see where bottlenecks may arise. Plus, the most popular towns would attract so many more people in the peak months. And our experience travelling to both regions in the month of July would support that the Amalfi Coast is far, far busier than Cinque Terre. It still does get very busy during the day, but things are generally more relaxed, and after hours the crowds really thin out fast. So the bottom line here is that if you hate crowds, try and avoid the peak months on the Amalfi Coast. So Cinque Terre gets the point on this one. This next point may go some way to explaining why the Amalfi Coast is much more popular, and that is the quality of the beaches. Cinque Terre is severely lacking in this area. There's only really one village that has a large beach, which is Monte Rosso. You can find smaller beaches and places to swim at most of the other villages, but they're just not that great. If you compare that to the Amalfi Coast, where just about every town has multiple beaches. Some of the more popular towns will have a main beach to get really busy, but you can usually find a quieter, smaller beach somewhere along the coastline that's a bit more relaxing and you can have more space to yourself. So that's a strong point for the Amalfi Coast, which brings us back to a deadlock at 4 points each. For our ninth point, we're going to have a brief look at the activities on offer in each location to try and break the deadlock. Now this is a very difficult one because the fact is, both destinations offer a very similar selection of boat tours, wine tours, cooking classes, water sports, and all of those organised paid tours that you would expect in a coastal location. So it's very difficult to split each destination. But Amalfi does have a deeper selection of museums and historical sites that you can explore on your own or with a tour if that's what you wanted to do. But these kinds of activities might be a very low priority when you're having a vacation by the sea. So that's 5 points for the Amalfi Coast and 4 for Cinque Terre with 2 points of comparison left to go. Number 10 is the weather. Now these two regions are not that far apart, so the differences are only small, with the average temperatures only varying slightly. Both enjoy very sunny and warm weather with average temperatures over 20 degrees, or 68 degrees Fahrenheit for our American cousins, all the way from May through to October. July and August are the hottest months in both regions, with the Amalfi Coast topping out at 30 degrees Celsius or 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and Cinque Terre at 29 degrees Celsius and 84 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's slightly warmer on the Amalfi Coast. But a bigger differentiator is the amount of rainfall that each region receives. Cinque Terre receives almost 50% more average rainfall in the peak summer month of July compared to the Amalfi Coast. When planning a summer holiday, maximising the chance of having beautiful sunny days is far more important than an extra degree or two in temperature, in my opinion. And that brings the Amalfi Coast out to an unassailable lead of 6 points to 4. But we still have 1 point of comparison to go. And we're only including this for planning purposes, and that is the question of whether you can see the region on a day trip. Now for Cinque Terre, the answer is yes. All 5 villages are relatively close together. You can travel between them quickly via the train, you'll still have plenty of time for a nice scenic ferry ride, and you can probably get some hiking in as well. If you want to see everything that the Amalfi Coast has to offer, you are going to need far more time than a single day. Even attempting to get things into a day means you'll lose a lot of time travelling on buses or ferries. It will all be very rushed, and you won't even have time to think about visiting out-of-the-way places like Capri. So even though you could do Cinque Terre in a day, I don't think you should, and you certainly shouldn't try it for the Amalfi Coast. Both regions deserve far more time to fully explore and appreciate. so we are awarding no points for that final point of comparison. So looking at our final score, the Amalfi Coast comes out the winner. Maybe your score is different, but we hope that one day you get to explore both regions, because they're both unique in their own way and absolutely worth a visit. And you can check out our full itineraries at both destinations with the videos on screen now.